Rudy,
Hey guys,
good to see you, man.
this is you.
One more and we have a quorum.
Yep.
Look at that background.
Look at that background. Most impressive. I need to find a
Walking
Star
on top
Trek
of the
background.
world.
Yeah, I put up a fake background too. I'm really not in my basement with my stuff hanging off the walls. This is just a picture.
That's
I'm
right.
not that fancy. This is really my chair.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter. How are you? Hi, David.
Good guys, how
David?
are you? How's
Doing
everyone?
well. We're doing well.
Great.
Excellent. I'll mention this towards the end of the meeting, but June 9th, I will not be here. So, Rudy, you're going to have to take the reins on that one.
Thank you for the heads up.
It is
You get a few months
Three-
to few months to
3
prepare.
months. That's right. 3 months. 3 months.
I
All
don't
I
think
can-
I'm not going to be here June 9th either.
It's true. Now there's Doreen. It's just going to be
I'm in
you.
Texas.
You, Chip, Pete, and Dave.
That's gonna have to
Karen,
call it.
that's it. Yep.
No, I'm in Texas.
God, they're dropping like flies.
Wait, really? June 9th? Well, we'll discuss it later, but
That's my wife's birthday. I don't know if she'll let me be on the zoning board that night or not.
nice.
Hopefully you'll make the right decision, Brian, actually.
If I don't, you won't see me in July.
That's good. It's too good. Excuse me. All right.
How are we doing on time? 6:59.
6:59. I'll give Karen 2 minutes. There's a lot of pandemic fatigue right now.
Agreed.
And it's not from like, I love seeing people even on Zoom. That's great. I love that. It's just miss work. I miss going to my office. I went into my office today. We have there's about 50 of us now, and they're allowing like shifts of people to go in, like 10 or less. Basically, you get your own corner of the office, and I got to sit at my desk again today. Wow, that was amazing.
I heard a lot of companies are allowing people who have been vaccinated to resume in office.
Yeah, and our office is we actually just before the pandemic did a significant amount of rework on our HVAC in the office, and a lot of the brand new tech that's being installed now, because we wanted to install it as sort of a showpiece for other clients and stuff like that as they come in. And so from an HVAC standpoint, our office is pretty safe, but we want to make sure that folks maintain distance and so on. But yeah, it is nice going back in the office. Old routines. Yes, I went out to lunch today in the old port. It was fantastic.
Any places open?
Most places are open. Some places go in, but I just grab something to go. I had sushi today. It was amazing. Okay. Well, I guess we can get started. Everybody all set? Are we streaming on the interwebs? And everyone just heard me say that? Cool.
I think so.
All right.
We are.
Grab a PDF here real quick. One moment.
So, James, maybe before we begin, could I ask just a procedural question?
Of course.
Am I a voting member today?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
Okay.
If Karen does show up, then no.
Yeah, it's just it's my first meeting where I might potentially be one, which is why I just wanted to ask the procedural question. So
You're lucky it's your second meeting. Sometimes someone's first meeting is like, okay, you're voting tonight.
It tends to happen real fast.
It does. We all grow up fast here in ZBA. Let me just one more. Oh, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Can you hear you?
I just blacked out for a moment there. Okay, but we will get started. So, welcome to the March 10th regular meeting of the Scarborough Zoning Board of Appeals. The meeting will now come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, the public has the right to hear everything that is being said and to view all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chairperson if you are unable to hear or see the proceedings. The board works from a prepared agenda and will take up tonight's items in the following order. We will go through the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment, our roll call, approval of the minutes from February 10th, 2021, approval of the draft written decision for appeal number 2700, and then we will go into our new appeals 2701, zoning board comments, and our adjournment. So before I continue, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Thank you. So during these proceedings, in each instance, in each application, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with each of the criteria or provisions of the applicable appeal. The board will ask questions necessary to understand the nature of the appeal as fully as possible. When all of the testimony has been heard, the chair, which is myself, will close the record, and all of the board will adopt findings of fact for each criterion of the appeal and vote to determine if the applicant has met the burden of proof necessary to meet that criterion. It is important to note that if any of the appeal or special exception criteria has not been met, the board must deny the appeal or application. In many cases, the appellant or landowner may have a personal problem which prompts the request for this variance. Please understand that this is not a legally relevant to the appeal, no matter how sympathetic the board may be to the appellant's situation. After the board votes on the merits of each criterion, a motion may be made to approve the appeal, and if there is a second, discussion will follow. The board will then state conclusions of law based on the findings of fact to support a decision on the motion. In most cases, the board will request that staff prepare a draft written decision based on the stated findings and conclusions, as well as the audio, video, and supporting materials in the record for approval at the next meeting. The general vote would then be taken on the appeal. If the majority of the voting members present vote in the affirmative, then the appeal is approved. If the majority of the voting members vote in the negative, the appeal is denied. A board's decision stands as of the date the vote was taken, regardless of the approval of a final written decision. Generally speaking, appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with Superior Court, except as otherwise provided by law, within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, if anyone present at this hearing may wish to preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that this board records your excuse me, that this board records your appearance, this evening on the basis for your support or opposition. So if you wish to file an appeal with Superior Court, you have to let us know on the record, or that you are here and you support or oppose an application. Again, we remind everyone this is a public proceeding. You have the right to hear and see what is happening. All persons speaking will be asked to state their name and address or affiliation, and all board members and interested parties are asked to direct their questions through the chair, which is myself. And one additional item I will read before we get into the board business, just in regard to virtual public meetings. This is a remote meeting using Zoom. People can access the meeting by going to the Zoning Board of Appeals webpage found on the Town of Scarborough website, or they can look on YouTube if you want to view it. To attend the Board of Appeals meeting virtually and provide public comment at the meeting, you click on the Zoom link that's available on the town website. For listening to the meeting with or without audio, for those that don't have a computer or the internet, there is a dial-in phone number posted on the agenda. The board recommends written public comment prior to an upcoming meeting at this time, given the remote video conference meeting format. Directions can be found on the zoning board's webpage on the town website. Attendees will be muted And if you wish to speak during the public portion of the appeal, you must raise your hand and be called on during public comment. Please only raise your hand once when it's time for public comment, not during an applicant's presentation or board deliberation. If I happen to drop off during the meeting due to technical difficulties, the vice chair, Mr. Karen, will take over for me and continue running the meeting until I return or not return. The chair, I will then, the meetings and procedures with this Zoom meeting are going to be the same as what I just previously stated. And if any board member loses connection, we'll give them an appropriate time, a minute, 2 minutes or so to reconnect. Otherwise, we will continue on from there. So with that being said, may we go into roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Hebert,
Here.
Mr. Howe,
Here.
and Mr. Karen,
Here.
and Mr. Bork,
Here.
Mr. Freilinger,
Here.
Ms. Shoup, and Alan Foster has resigned, so he will no longer be on the board.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Longstaff. And just for the record, in Ms. Shoup's absence, Mr. Peter Freilinger is a voting member tonight. So the next item on our agenda, approval of the minutes from February 10th, 2021. Have the board members had a chance to review the minutes from last month? Does anyone have any edits or corrections or comments? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Mr. Chair, a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of February 10th, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Bork. And is there a second, Mr. Karen?
I second.
Excellent, thank you. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Aye.
and Mr. Howe?
Yes.
I will vote aye as well. Excellent, the minutes are approved. Next, we have the approval of the draft written decision for the appeal heard on February 10th, 2021. Appeal number 2700-2700, the special exception appeal, home occupation by Leanne Denon. Do I have a motion? Has everyone on the board had a chance to review all the findings of fact that were presented? Excellent. And seeing no questions, do I have a motion on the floor to accept the draft written decision? Mr. Bork.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the draft written decision for appeal heard on February 10th, 2021. Appeal number 2700 for special exemption for Leanne Denon.
Very good. Do I have a second, Mr. Karen?
I second.
Excellent. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Aye.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Excellent. I will vote as
Sorry.
aye as well. It's okay. All right. Next, let's go right into it. Appeal number 2701, limited reduction of yard size residential appeal by the design company on behalf of Diane Garofalo, please excuse my pronunciation, and Bob Westberg, 6 Houghton Street, Assessor's Map U002, Lot 147. Is there someone here who would like to speak on behalf of or in support of this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe Walter Wilson is present. There may be others as well. Doreen will elevate them into a participant mode, or a panelist mode rather. And while she's doing that, I'll just give you a brief overview of the appeal.
Thank you.
For appeal number 2701. It is a limited reduction of yard size appeal. It concerns the property at 6 Houghton Street. Basically, the limited reduction is to get relief of about 1 foot and 6 inches on the front yard setback in order to construct or actually renovate the second story to create a little more headroom. They also want to install a balcony, a terraced balcony over the existing front porch, which is already non-conforming by about that much. So, or actually it's the side setback that it's non-conforming on. So anyway, there'll be a request for 1.5 feet of relief on the front yard setback, and then on the left south side yard setback, they're looking for a reduction of just 1 foot. again, to kind of accommodate the second story that is vertically over the already slightly non-conforming first story of the structure. And the applicant's representative, Walter Wilson, I'm sure will give you more information and be happy to answer your questions.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, welcome. If you would, please take us through what we have here tonight.
Well, good evening. The proposed project is to renovate an existing second floor room over the first floor of the house. It doesn't include any additions to the square footage, and it is only slightly over the setbacks. In order to renovate the second floor, the request for the side yard on the front and on the left side is required to do this job. The left side wall on the second floor location stays exactly where it is. It's just that wall is only slightly more than 4 foot high. And the request is when we reframe the roof and the exterior walls, that wall will be brought up to an 8 foot height. And so that needs the side yard request on the second side. The front yard, in order to do it structurally sound and right and get correct bearing, we move the front gable wall forward 1.5 feet. This is still 6 foot back from the first floor front wall, as it gives location for the roof deck over the first floor porch. And like I said, there's no increase in square footage or lot coverage on the property.
Okay. Any questions from the board thus far?
Mr. Chairman, it's Mr. Freilinger. Could I ask a question?
Of course.
So just to clarify, Mr. Wilson, the left side wall already exists. It's just not currently an 8 foot standard height wall. Is that correct?
Exactly. There are in the packet some plans that were done back in '87, I believe it was, for the rear of this property. This front bedroom was never renovated, and the plans show how it exists today with 4.5 foot high walls on both side walls. And in order to make it a more livable space, we want to raise up the ceiling height and raise up the side walls in order to get windows in both the south and north side walls as well as the front. But that wall on the left side is already there. It's just a matter of extending it up higher.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay, any other questions? I have one question. Mr. Wilson, you said the square footage is not increasing, correct? Livable square footage?
Actually, the livable square footage on the second floor will increase. It's the lot coverage on the property that doesn't increase because the planned renovations are over the existing first floor and there's no extension of the existing first floor walls, so the lot coverage is not increased.
So the lot coverage is not increased, but the livable square footage is increased.
It's going to be increased by, I think it's 4 feet by 16 feet. So 72 square feet on the second floor.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, can everyone see the screen? Are you looking at the plans?
I actually were looking at the agenda. You may have the
Okay.
opposite screen shared. I was
All
about
right.
to send you a
That's
message.
that's what I wanted to know. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can change that.
Great.
Let's see. Is that any better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Seeing, yes, you were going to say something, Brian?
No, I'm good. I was just going to say I don't understand why that doesn't change when I change the tab on my screen, but it's as long as you can see what I'm showing you, that's great.
I think sometimes if you're sharing the program rather than the screen, it'll just whatever's on that program on say Microsoft Word or so. Okay, so seeing no further comment, excuse me. Let's go into the questions here. The existing buildings or structures on the lot for which the limited reduction of yard size residential is requested were erected prior to July 3rd, 1991, or the lot is a vacant non-conforming lot of record. Mr. Wilson?
The original building was constructed in 1907 as indicated on the tax assessor's information card. In 1987-88, a rear addition and interior remodeling was performed. Then that shows on your packet that I sent you.
This is actually Chris.
Okay. Number two, the requested reduction is reasonably necessary to permit the owner or occupant of the property to use and enjoy the property in essentially the same manner as other similar properties are utilized in the zoning district.
The requested reductions are reasonably necessary in order to renovate the second floor front bedroom of this home. The existing sidewalls on the second floor are only 4.5 feet high, and the only windows are located in the front gable. The proposal will allow windows to be located in the full height sidewalls, improve ventilation, and permit more sunlight to penetrate the room. Similar properties have been granted yard reductions in order to improve their home in compliance with the Higgins Beach character zone, which this one does also.
Excellent, thank you. I will note that even though it is good to point out, we are not governed by precedent on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Number three, due to the physical features of the lot and or the location of existing structures on the lot, it would not be practical to construct the proposed expansion, enlargement, or new structure in conformance with the currently applicable yard size requirements.
The proposed enlargement expansion of the second floor is over the existing first floor of the building. It does not include any lot coverage increase. The location of the building on the lot necessitates the request for the limited reduction of yard sizes in both the front and the left yards.
Okay. Number four, the impacts and effects of the enlargement, expansion, or new building or structure on existing uses in the neighborhood will not be substantially different from or greater than the impacts and effects of a building or structure which conforms to the yard size requirement.
The proposal does not increase the footprint, like I said, of the on the property, and it is limited to just an area above an existing first floor. The project has obtained approval of the required administrative review for being substantially in compliant with the Higgins Beach Character Zoning District. The impacts and effects of this proposal will not be substantially different from one which conforms to the yard size requirements.
Okay, thank you. Number five, the applicant has not commenced construction of the enlargement, expansion, building, or structure for which the limited reduction in yard size is requested, so that the Board of Appeals is not considering an after-the-fact application.
No construction is started.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussion from the board? Okay. Mr. Longstaff, have we received any public comment, whether that be emails or written letters?
Doreen, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe we received any public written comment on this appeal.
We did have one email.
I'm
It was-
sorry. Okay.
Yeah, it was in support from 8 Houghton Street.
Okay.
And who was the who was that from?
Hold on, I'm looking. It was from John Osborne, John
Okay.
and Susan Osborne.
Excellent. And the records show that was a note in support of this renovation. Okay. I guess seeing no comments or questions from the board, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Actually, at this point, we'll go into public hearing. Would anyone from the public who is in attendance at this meeting or on the phone would like to speak at this time? Okay, I don't see any attendees or no one raising their hands, so we'll proceed on from there. So the public hearing is closed at this time. Now the board will deliberate on the different aspects of this application. First item, number 1. The existing buildings or structures on the lot for which the limited reduction of yard size residential is requested were erected prior to July 3rd, 1991. And the lot is a vacant, non-conforming lot of record, excuse me. Mr. Bork.
Yes, the building was originally built in 1907. So it does meet that criterion.
Okay, Mr. Karen.
Agreed. I don't really have anything further to add.
Yeah, seems pretty straightforward. Mr. Freilinger.
Just a quick question about the rear addition. The rear addition doesn't have anything to do with the proposed variance being requested today, so we don't need to worry about that at all. And in any event, it was prior to 1991, so we can.
That's
move on.
correct. Yep, that predates zoning in the town of Scarborough, so whatever happened before then, well, we can't really take into account.
Okay, got it.
Good question. Mr. Howe, anything?
Nothing to add. I think it's covered.
Yep, I agree. They've clearly shown, based on the tax assessor information, that it was built in 1907, and this renovation was before 1991. Seeing that, all those in favor of criteria 1 being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. Excellent. Number 2. The requested reduction is reasonably necessary to permit the owner or occupant of the property to use and enjoy the property in essentially the same manner as other similar properties are utilized in the zoning district. Mr. Bork.
Well, first of all, the project has been reviewed and judged to be in compliance with the Higgins Beach character zone. Secondly, it does not change the footprint. The expansion is strictly the second floor. And finally, I would point out that this is a request that we can make, we can approve because it is within the scope of the limited reduction yard size criterion.
Excellent. Mr. Karen.
I agree. Based on the existing drawings provided to us, we can see that the space is being proposed to be used in a very similar manner. Bringing it up to more recent, perhaps codes and just in usage, greater ceiling heights. So no concerns here.
All right. Mr. Freilinger.
Yeah, I agree. And I note that bringing up the ceiling heights and increasing circulation is probably an improvement from a code perspective as well. So there's a public good from that perspective for future uses of the property.
Great. Mr. Howe.
I agree. I think we've met the requirement.
Excellent. And you're mentioning codes and obviously having work done in that space on a house that is over 100 years old will certainly bring anything that they touch, the contractor does, into code compliance with today's standards. So that being said, all those in favor of number 2 being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Freilinger,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. Number 3, due to the physical features of the lot and or the location of existing structures on the lot, it would not be practical to construct the proposed expansion, enlargement, or new structure in conformance with the currently applicable yard size requirements. Mr. Bork.
It does not change the footprint, so there's really no expansion. Technically, there is a very limited reduction in yard size in order to do this, in order for it to be structurally sound and to elevate the side walls on the second floor to a much more livable situation.
Very good. Mr. Karen?
I agree. Seeing that this is primarily taking place above the existing structure and not encroaching on any of the adjacent areas. I don't see any concerns with this proposal.
Okay, Mr. Fralinger,
I agree with the comments. Nothing further.
Mr. Howe,
Agree with the comments.
excellent. They're not asking for a lot here, as Mr. Bohr pointed out. They're well within their right to ask for this amount of relief. I'll just note for the finding of facts that the lot coverage is not increasing. The building is staying within its footprint, but the livable square footage is increasing by raising up those walls. That is now a livable space and has to abide by all current codes and standards. Number three, all those in favor, excuse me, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Fralinger,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
and I vote aye as well. Number four, the impacts and effects of the enlargement, expansion, or new building or structure on the existing uses in the neighborhood will not be substantially different from or greater than the impacts and effects of a building or structure which conforms to the yard size requirement. Mr. Bork.
The request actually improves the home and puts it more in character with the other properties around it in the Higgins Beach zone.
Very good. Mr. Karen?
Agreed. With the proposals, there aren't any concerns with it being out of conformance, but rather, as Mr. Bork stated, better in conformance with the adjacent community.
Very good. Mr. Fralinger?
No, I agree, and it's good to note that the application notes that the administrative review for the Higgins Beach zoning district has been conducted and approved. It's also good to note that a close neighbor added public comment in support of the proposal, which would indicate that it is in keeping with the neighborhood. So I agree.
Very good. Mr. Howe?
I agree.
Excellent. Yes, it's great that it's always good to have a neighbor supporting the work that you're having done, especially if they're in immediate proximity. As Mr. Poor pointed out, we're talking about overall improvements to the home.
Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would also just add for the board's edification and also just to go into the record, with respect to it becoming actually more conforming with this proposed renovation, you might have noted on the plan set that was provided in the application, the existing structure had a rather high rear addition as far as the roof peak, and the front addition was quite a bit lower. And so with Mr. Wilson's planned renovations, he really strove to try to sort of even out those two roof ridges so that they were obviously the code wants you to have a single roof ridge. He couldn't quite accomplish that and stay within the footprint of the building, but he did raise that front ridge to be closer to the same height as the back ridge on that back addition. So I think it really does in that way make it more conforming and more compliant with the Higgins Beach character code. I just wanted to put that in make that note in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Longstaff. I really appreciate that. Always, we want to see all these projects as much as possible adhere to local character codes aesthetically, especially for the neighbors who are affected by it nearby. All those in favor of number 4 being met, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Fralinger,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. Number 5, the applicant has not commenced construction of the enlargement, expansion, building, or structure for which the limited reduction in yard size is requested, so that the Board of Appeals is not considering an after-the-fact application. Mr. Bork.
Yes, the applicant has proven it.
Pretty straightforward. Mr. Karen,
Yeah, nothing further to add.
Mr. Fralinger,
That's all good.
Mr. Howe.
All good.
Excellent. I concur as well. No work. And Mr. Longstaff, you can confirm from the town's perspective that no work has begun.
Yes, that's true.
Excellent. Okay, all those in all those in favor of number 5 being met, Mr. Bork.
Yes.
Excellent. Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Fralinger,
Aye.
Mr. Howe.
Yes.
Now I'll vote aye as well. Do I have a motion for the approval of appeal number 2701? Mr. Bork?
Yes, I move that we approve appeal number 2701 for a limited reduction in yard size.
Do I have a second?
I
Mr.
second.
Karen. Excellent. Thank you. All those in favor, Mr. Bork,
Yes.
Mr. Karen,
Aye.
Mr. Fralinger,
Aye.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
and I will vote aye as well. Congratulations, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Westberg.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Have a good evening. Okay. At this time, we'll move to our last bit of business. Does anyone have any board comments, announcements? Is there anything, Brian or Doreen, that you'd like to bring to our attention?
I have nothing at the moment. I must admit, I didn't really think much about staff comments, but it's been a busy week. So nothing this time, and I'll certainly keep the board apprised of anything that happens. There will be some, I guess I would just mention, I think you all received some amendments to the ordinance in your packets.
Yes.
Please make those insertions into your hard copy of the ordinance so that you have an up-to-date. And I think there will probably be some more amendments down the road here shortly. So we'll keep getting those to you. And if you could just please make sure that your ordinance, and if you ever do have any question, if you have the most up-to-date copy, you can always go on the website and within a day or two of any amendments becoming effective, the town clerk, Tody Justice, usually has those inserted into the copy or the version that you'll get on the website. So you can always check with that just to make sure you have the latest and the greatest of anything that's happened to change the ordinance. So with that, I guess that's about all I have to mention at this time.
And that's all we have to say about that. Anything else from folks? I know I mentioned this earlier, but just so that people know, I will not be here during the June meeting. So, Mr. Karen, if you are available, you will be chairing that meeting. And yes, Mr. Bork. You'll need to unmute.
Oops, I'm sorry. I thought I was pressing a space bar. Apparently I wasn't. But anyway, show of hands, how many people attended the Maine Municipal Association webinar on planning boards and ZBAs?
Excellent, Mr. Bork and Mr. Fralinger.
Just two of us.
I have to admit, unfortunately, I was not available to attend. But thank you very much for both you and Mr. Fralinger for going. I hope you found it very beneficial.
Yeah, it was. As a matter of fact, I think one of the key points that I got out of it was that it's very important to determine up front if an applicant has standing, and whether or not the appeal is a legitimate appeal that worthy of consideration. And I think that we're very fortunate that we have Brian, demonstrate that to us ahead of time. Apparently, in some municipalities, that's not the case. So that really came through loud and clear.
And Mr. Chairman, I just say again as a thank you to Brian. Brian did an orientation for me a few weeks or a week or so before the last month, the February meeting, and really brought home a lot of the concepts that were reinforced by the MMA about information access and the importance of maintaining things on the record for the meetings. So I felt like I had a leg up on that portion of the call. So good job, Brian, and thank you for the orientation. I want to thank you for that.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, as always, we really appreciate the work that Brian and Doreen both do, because I know there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes when preparing each and every single application. So all of us really appreciate the work that you guys put in, especially when occasionally these Wednesday nights can be a little long. If there is nothing further to add from anyone, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Bork.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Second for Mr. Karen.
I second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Seems like a loudly vocal aye. So thank you all very much for joining us. And we'll see you next month.
Sounds good.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Cheers.